Should have come back. Right, we may as well good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Traffic and Transportation Decision Meeting. I'm Councillor Simon Bosher and I'm the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation. Before we get started, we have a couple of items of housekeeping that we have to go through. For safety information, if you should hear a continuous fire alarm, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Please do not attempt to use the lifts and assemble at the Queen Victoria statue in the front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Portsmouth Cultural Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who has signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should remember to sign out on leaving today's meeting. In order to clarify, if the fire alarm does sound, follow me because I'll be out the door as quick as anybody. Live web streaming. Can I just draw everybody's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed, that's filmed, from a camera at a fixed location at the back of the meeting room. It's in the far corner. And the recording will be on the Council's website. The camera will mainly capture the backs of anyone making deputations, but there may be some footage of them as they approach and leave the table where the microphones are located, and of people entering and leaving the room whilst the meeting is in progress. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. And please can I ask that everybody uses the microphones provided when they're speaking. Okay, here endeth that lesson. Right, apologies for absence.
None?
None whatsoever. Yep. Perhaps I've introduced myself, perhaps for the benefit of the people in the public gallery, if I could ask people to introduce themselves. Perhaps we start with you, Lynn.
Councillor Lindstang, Councillor for Bathurst.
Amazing how I said use the microphone and the first person doesn't, isn't it?
I was listening.
Yes, please.
Sorry about that. Councillor Lindstang, Councillor for Baffins Ward.
We'll shout a bit louder. Is that better? Is that turn the volume up? Oh, that sounded promising. No? Yes? We'll shout.
Can you hear me now? Oh, all right. Oh. I'll turn it back down then.
Yeah. Modern technology.
Councillor Yahya Chaudhry, Charles Dickens Ward.
I'm Joanne Wildsmith from Democratic Services, taking the minutes today.
Pam Turton, Assistant Director for Transport.
Natasha Lee, Finance for Regen.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, declarations of interests? No, I have none. Right, with your indulgence, members, I'm going to change the running order of the agenda because we have some people here to give deputations, and so rather than go through 3 and 4, I'm going to go straight to agenda item 5, which is TRO 3 2018 Christchurch Gardens, Perone Road, Stroudley, Winter Road and parking restrictions proposals, but primarily I think Christchurch Gardens. Now I have some deputations here. I have a Mr. Michael Stead, thank you. A Mr. Andrew Cripps, thank you, and possibly a Miss Lockyer. Excellent. If you three would like to come down and sit at the table where the microphones are. I don't think that Mrs. Lockyer is going to come down. Ah, that's fine, thank you. So it's just Mr. Stead and Mr. Cripps. Okay, well, before we go, perhaps, Pam, you could introduce the item for us?
Yes. A number of parking restrictions were advertised under Traffic Regulation Order number 3, 2018 for 21 days between January and February of this year. This report outlines the responses that have been received to that consultation, and they are replicated in full at Appendix B. It's recommended that the proposals are implemented as advertised, with the following amendments as shown in the recommendations, but particularly it's recommended that consideration is given to the implementation of traffic calming and a reduced speed limit in Christchurch Gardens, that a further extension of the restrictions explored in Stradley Avenue, Lower Drayton Lane. And in Winter Road, it is recommended that the specified lengths of 24-hour double yellow lines are changed to an 8 AM to 6 PM single yellow line to enable the off-peak evening and overnight parking. It's also recommended that the remaining 29 proposals under TRO 3 2018 are implemented as advertised.
Thank you very much, Pam. Okay, I have Mr. Stead, you're first on my list. You have, is it? 6 minutes. It's 6 minutes. And I will give you a wave of the hand when you have about a minute to go, if you need that much. If you press the big button on your mic, that's it. Excellent.
Cabinet members, councillors, I make my deputation with regards to the proposal to reduce the double yellow lines by 6 metres eastward of number 4 Christchurch Gardens. Firstly, and I'll refer you to paragraph 3.31, the original laying of double yellow lines under TRO 95/2017 were, in my view, laid without proper consultation. Notices in accordance with paragraph 7(1)(c) of the local authority's traffic order procedures were not displayed in Christchurch Gardens. Any such notice would or should have been displayed directly opposite my front door on a lamppost outside number 4 and would have been very obvious to me. The total lack of response by any resident for or against the proposal would indicate that residents either did not care or had no view to express, both of which have been disproved by the 15 responses, not 12 as in your report, paragraph 4.2, since the lines have been removed. Since the lines have been laid. I would therefore ask for the lines to be removed. Secondly, and I refer you to paragraph 3.32, proper analysis of Appendix B to your report shows that of the 15 submissions made, not 12, 11 residents wanted the line removed. 3 of those residents said or shortened. 3 residents just wanted them shortened, and 1 resident wanted them to remain. If the majority vote of residents is to have the lines removed from our residential cul-de-sac, where I understand double yellow lines are unusual anyway, why do we now have a proposal before you to reduce rather than to remove those lines? Thirdly, it is regrettable that so much of your time and that of your officers has had to be wasted on this issue. An issue that started with a neighbour dispute regarding parking that has not been resolved by these lines and has now somehow become an issue of road safety. As a driver in the fire service for 25 of my 30 years service, I was taught to reduce my speed for the prevailing road conditions and to be aware of potential unseen hazards and drive accordingly. I would only expect traffic calming measures to be installed where a risk cannot be removed by sensible driving. Sensible driving in Christchurch Gardens, a road of about 300 metres, appears to have been the case for the past 50 years, as I cannot find any record of incidents occurring in that time. And finally, if the only way of dealing with this issue must be a compromise, then I will support the proposal by my friend and neighbour, Mr. Cripps, that the yellow lines be reduced on the straight portion of the road and only retained on the corner, and that white lines are painted on the pavement so that cars can park up to those white lines to allow free passage of pedestrians. Thank you for receiving my deputation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cripps.
Cabinet members and councillors, my name is Andrew Cripps and I live at number 4 Christchurch Gardens. I'd just like to point out that I'm not actually totally against this TRO 3 2018, but I'd just like to add and back up a lot of things that Mr. Stead has just said. The background to the issue is a dispute between two neighbours round the corner of the east side of Christchurch Gardens, which police were called, and they raised the problem about the parking with the yellow lines on the bend, which then produced TRO 95 2017. Mr. Stead has already said about we're all aware of the local authorities' traffic orders, and one of those regulations actually says to display notices in roads or other places affected by the order. The delivery of notices or letters to premises or premises occupied by persons appearing in the authority to be likely to be affected by the position of the order. I live at number 4, and I've got a lamppost on the corner of my drive that if you look at the photographs I produce, you can see the lamppost which says lamppost 2. That's right on the corner of my drive. Now, under the original notice, between the 12th of September and the 3rd of October, which these notices supposedly was put up in Christchurch Gardens according to a technician's worksheet, I would have noticed that notice. You can see the present notice attached to the lamppost at the moment. However, the other 2 points in the road that they could have put the other 2 notices, the telephone pole at the end of the road, which is outside, I think, number 9, and lamppost 3. That's the 3 positions between the original order of number 4 and number 6. I can't find anybody in the close that have actually said, or in the gardens, that actually said to me they saw a notice. It was the day that they turned up to paint the lines that they were questioned by one of the residents, and that's when telephone calls and emails started coming into the council regarding it. So there's a dispute on whether the notices were put up. Mr. Stead has already mentioned about all the number of responses. I totally agree with what he's saying. It seems a bit strange that there was none on the first order, but all of a sudden there's all this phone calls and emails been going backwards and forwards. The safety issue, as far as I'm aware, like Mr. Stead, I've never known any accidents. I've lived there 10 years, or incidents on that corner. Some neighbours who live on the bend, and one I know of in Christchurch Gardens who's lived there since the house he's been built, can't remember any incidents. Raised by residents residing east in Christchurch Gardens, saying that previous lines being laid in 2017, cars parked on the bend made it blind to corner for them, whether or not they were coming east or west, going in or out the gardens. Before the lines were put down, vehicles parked in the area of the bend acted as a deterrent for vehicles speeding around that corner. And believe you me, I live at number 4. When I've got to back off my drive sometimes, I've got to be especially careful of traffic coming that way. So that's where I'm coming from with that aspect of it. And then before the lines were put down, they acted as a deterrent. So residents in the west side now have got to be cautious coming off their drives. And I've noticed since the lines have been down, the cars now can see straight up to the end of the London Road. So they tend to come round that corner, they can see there's nothing coming the other way, so they tend to put the foot down a little bit faster to go. So without further action from Portsmouth City Council, it now leaves itself open to be criticised for any incidents that may occur in Christchurch Gardens in the future. One of the things that has happened before the lines were put down, there's a couple of properties that have had drop curbs put in and had their drives redesigned so they can get the cars off the road, so no cars can park on the north side of Christchurch Gardens, as pointed out on the photograph. You can see where to put the drop curbs in. So, as far as the problem, it can be resolved, and quite easily. Remove the yellow lines from the driveway of number 4 eastwards by 12 metres, but leave the lines on the bend. Give an additional parking for approximately 3 cars, rather than the one at present. This will also act as a traffic calming measure. Paint white lines on the footpath and road showing how far footpath drivers can put their vehicles, similarly to that of Cranbourne Road Cosham, which is the other photograph, which is obviously something the council agreed to on the north side, where vehicles can put their near side tyres up on the curb line. And then obviously that will give the access to pedestrians, pushchairs or wheelchairs. And the last part is obviously it's coming off the London road, it's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. So either to reduce that to 20 or 10 miles an hour would help with the traffic calming measures in Christchurch Gardens. And a lot of the time has been wasted through this, and I believe it's because those first notices weren't put up. We could have dealt with this a long time ago. So anyway, it could be done without too much cost. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Cripps. Pam, there's been a bit of confusion over the previous TRO and this TRO. Am I correct in saying that what we're doing, irrespective of the dispute as to whether there were signs or not, this TRO is designed to tidy up that misunderstanding in what we're actually looking at?
Yes, this TRO has been designed to respond to the concerns raised about that initial consultation.
Okay. Now, with regards to, both deputations have made reference to putting white lines on the pavement to position the cars. Is that something that can be done? Because I don't think it would necessarily mean it as a TRO, would it?
No, we can certainly look into that. I think it will depend on the width of the pavement and whether there's sufficient width to enable us, how much we could actually do that on the pavement to allow sufficient width to still be left for users of the pavement.
So, irrespective of whatever decision we take here, we could certainly look into, we can arrange for somebody to go up and have a look at the pavement design and see what we actually can do with regards to I'm a bit reluctant to use the word formalising, but I think you know where I'm coming from, actually making it a little bit more user-friendly for the benefit of pedestrians as well as residents, because certainly it's something I asked to have to be looked at, and I actually have been up a couple of times just under my own steam to have a wander and have a look. So you may or may not have seen a strange bloke loitering in the close. If you did, it was me, just to get a feel for the decision I was actually going to take on this basis. Lynn, Yaya, do you have any comments to make?
Yes, I mean, if there have been no recorded accidents or incidents regarding safety, and if the majority of residents don't want the lines there, it seems sensible to me to remove them. I believe in going along with what residents, they know the area, they know what happens, and I think that the lines on the corner, yes, are a very good idea for safety's sake.
Yaya?
I think what is the Lynn said, and which is the majority of the public, what they are looking for, I think it makes sense for the safety and to do the alters.
I mean, for my part, I had a look up there when I went up there, and I've read all the representations. I have had some emails in as well, and I've certainly been aware of the correspondence that you two gentlemen have been putting into officers as well. That's fine, you know. I understand it becomes a very emotive issue in that respect. I think Nikki's taken it all in good humour, shall we say, because she. I think laying down in a darkened room is something she does on a Fridays, but hey ho. For my part, I do think that the double yellow lines on the corner are important for a road safety issue. I appreciate that accident statistics historically might say one thing, but certainly the internal combustion engine is beginning to clog up a lot of it, and the fact that some people have had drop curbs put in to take more vehicles, it probably isn't the same as it was several years. Certainly where I grew up in Farlington, it was a rarity to see a car in the street, but nowadays it's almost standing room only, and that's Farlington, it's not some areas of the city. But certainly there is a road safety issue there with the bend, but I think somehow the extension of the double yellow lines on further round and taking up 2 or 3 parking spaces is perhaps a little bit unnecessary. So my decision on this will be to shorten off the double yellow lines and just leave them on the bend for a road safety point of view. So we will get rid of the section in the report that recommends taking them out. And we will also separately have a look at introducing white lines, if appropriate, because obviously they have to look at it from an engineering point of view to try and make the parking a little bit more uniform in the street as well. So on Christchurch Gardens, recommendation 2.1 is that double yellow lines on the bend are reduced in length by 6 metres eastward from number 4's driveway as proposed, I think is your driveway, so that we can get there. And the traffic calming measures and reduced speed limit from 30 to 20 is considered by the Road Safety and Active Travel team. So they will actually look at formalising that at the same token. But separately, and I won't have it written into the recommendations because it's not part of a TRO, we will look at the white lines to see what we can do on the pavements. So that's with regards to recommendations 2.1 and 2.1.1. With regards to the others, we've had no representations as such on all the other ones that have been introduced because we have to deal with this as a block. Do Lynn and Yaya, do you have any comments to make on any of the others while we're at it? Perone Road, Military Road, Stroudley, Lower Drayton Lane, Winter Road? Or are you happy for those? You're happy with those as they are?
Perron Road in particular, I see that regularly when I walk the dog, so yeah, I think it's...
Yes, that's to give visibility for the stub road, yeah. And Yaya?
Yes, I am happy to go ahead because it will be make much better for the residents.
Okay, well, thank you very much. On that basis, I will make the decision that the recommendations are as is with the remaining ones as well. Okay.
Excuse me, Councillor Voscher.
Yes.
Did you say that you would resolve it that the TRO for Christchurch Gardens would be as in your papers?
Well, the recommendation says that double yellow lines on the bend are reduced in length by 6 metres and that the traffic calming measures and reduced the speed from 30 to 20 is considered by the active travel team. So they will actually look into seeing whether we can add that to the 20-mile-an-hour network and if traffic calming measures are necessary, shall we say, although I wouldn't think that we're going to be putting speed humps in Christchurch Gardens anytime soon, to be quite honest.
No. Well, we are asking that reduction of 6 metres of the double yellow lines is extended to about 12 metres, I think. So it just stays on the bend.
Otherwise, you just give them one car back.
So we want the whole straightaway double yellow lines to be removed. And if necessary,
is that possible to actually? So I'm looking to my expert over here on my right.
We have looked at it and we are recommending 6 metres as opposed to any further than that because we think that would offer the best protection and the best improvements in terms of visibility.
Could I just ask why 6 metres come up? Because you could actually do away with 12 metres there and keep the lines on the bend. If you look at the photograph, you can see it.
I haven't got the photographs in front. Oh, thank you. Do you want to have a look at those, or have you seen those powerful? Oh, that didn't work, did it?
No, it's fine. I mean, it has been reviewed by our officers in the engineering team, and the view was taken that 6 metres would be the best compromise solution, bearing in mind what people have said about safety and visibility and recognising the opposite desire for the removal in its entirety of the double yellow lines.
Can I ask something?
Yes, Joe.
As I think is the engineer and your comments is together coming from the, because of the safety reason, you taken 6 meter not instead of 12 meter. Is it?
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Right, well, I've got to make a decision. What I'm going to propose is that we stick with the 6 metres that we're actually looking to remove at this moment in time. Doesn't mean to say it can't be revisited, but we've got to start somewhere, and I think the 6 metres is the appropriate thing to do on the advice that I've had from the safety team and on that basis. So we're going to stick with the 6 metres. We're going to look with the reduction to 20 mile an hour, and we will also have a look at the layout with regards to the pavements. Okay.
Can I just ask that
Well-
if they come up to review it, could you involve the residents as well?
If there is, with any TRO, if there is a decision that's being taken to either put in, remove, or whatever double yellow lines, it has to go through a statutory consultation process anyway. So that would involve members of the public and a public consultation, irrespective of whatever may or may not have happened first time round with this particular issue. So you would get that statutory consultation in the way that we actually advertise it. And the same process applies for anything, because we're effectively changing the nature of the road by introducing restrictions or otherwise, so that would be the case. Okay, thank you very much indeed for coming. We will now move on to so I'm just finding that report. Right, ladies and gentlemen, the next one I'm moving forward is agenda item 6, which is the Cockleshell Gardens double yellow lines, for which I have Ms. Doreen Stevenson, which I gather you want to be represented by, is it Mrs. or Miss McClure? Ms. McClure. And I also have Councillor Stubbs as well. So if you'd like to come to the front. Okay, thank you. Okay, Pam, if you'd like to introduce Cockleshell Gardens.
Okay, so in response to concerns regarding parking, a statutory 21-day consultation under Traffic Regulation Order 115/2017 took place in November last year, with a mixed response and no clear way forward. As a result, a letter, which is included in Appendix A, with 5 options, was sent to all 51 properties in Cockleshell Gardens to seek their views. As set out in section 4.3 of the report, 17 residents responded, with most indicating that they would prefer option 1, no new restrictions, part or full-time. 6 residents were supportive of option 3, which is double yellow lines at the road narrowing pinch point, and 4 residents were supportive of option 4, which is a single yellow line on the south side after the road narrowing. Given the mix of views and the recognition that introducing parking restrictions can increase the pressure on remaining parking spaces and in fact often cause vehicles to park in more unsuitable locations, a compromise solution where minimal restrictions where most needed was identified, and the recommendations that you see in section 2 were put forward.
Thank you very much. Ms. McClure, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Simon. Portsmouth City Council were contacted to request help to sort the chaos that is inconsiderate, dangerous and on occasions illegal parking in Cockleshell Gardens on Saturdays and Sundays. Without further consultation, notices were pinned to 2 lampposts at each end of the road, completely missing 90% of the residents. The notices proposed double yellow lines. Today's meeting is unnecessary when some simple monitoring was needed. This could then have been followed up with warning notices and/or infringement notices issued to offenders. We all feel this could have been effective. I and my neighbours fully support the children using the sports fields, but we were also concerned for their safety, not to mention the residents. It is similar to a school drop-off and pick-up. but the danger is increased by 3 factors. A, the extended time the children are exposed to passing traffic as parents load, unload kit, during which time they are distracted. Cockleshell Gardens does not benefit from the additional warning signs and restrictive road markings afforded to a school. And C, because of the limited parking, some drivers become frustrated, park badly, and, or more importantly, start rushing at greater speeds to find a space. We have all seen it. It's well worth considering that the likelihood of a child being injured here, we feel, is more a case of when rather than if. In such an event, perhaps the Council might like to consider its position when so many warnings and attempts by residents have been made to advise the Council. As far as we were able to assess, no one asked for nor wants double yellow lines. This was a proposal by an officer who vehemently argued that timed restrictions were not available, but she presumably forgot the Fratton Park football area. By way of background, it was not a small number, nor a couple of residents who expressed concerns about the illegal parking. As the representative for Neighbourhood Watch, residents continually complained to me about the football traffic, and I have emails dating back to 2013 too numerous to print off. The aerial image supplied within the document from Portsmouth City Council is not indicative of the real-life situation during the Saturday or Sunday rush hours. Relating to paragraph 3.4.1, I'm not sure I understand this paragraph. This was a suggestion from myself and a neighbour attending a meeting with the relevant officer, but was rejected. Clarification as to why timed restrictions are not possible would be helpful. What is different about Cockleshell Gardens from other areas? It seems blatantly obvious that the entire length of Cockleshell Gardens would benefit from restrictions to ensure all residents are protected. This is not a tinker with the problem, but requires a full consultation. Every house in Cockleshell Gardens has at least 1 parking space, and most have 2. Most of the time, the road is light on parked vehicles, and those that are parked would have facilities off-road except Saturday and Sunday, during the hours when the football takes place and parking becomes dangerous. I've previously indicated possible solutions without introducing parking restriction. A sign was placed on the pavement outside number 49 Cockleshell Gardens. It requested that patrons of the football did not park in Cockleshell Gardens. It worked, but I was advised that Portsmouth City Council felt it was a hazard. I now learn there was a complaint and hence it was removed. It would be useful to know the nature of the complaint. As I understand it from the covenant of the lease, Cockleshell Community Sports Centre are required to act in accordance with the terms of the lease. This needs further scrutiny by Portsmouth City Council and the management of the Cockleshell Community Sports Centre. Previously mentioned option has been on-site parking from the existing gated area in Halliday Crescent. This works well for all the tournaments and might solve the problem, especially the safety of children. One of the attached papers was sent from a neighbour in Driftwood Gardens, but the use of the facility was denied, and that it has been an issue for carers attempting to get to patients in Cockleshell Gardens, and ambulances would experience considerable difficulty trying to access properties on Saturdays and Sundays. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to a small sample of the Do Not on the Highway Code, which prohibits parking opposite or within 10 metres of a junction and parking on the pavement that obstructs and inconveniences pedestrians. None of the 5 options proposed would provide a suitable solution and would probably worsen the situation for everyone concerned. I have a copy of the lease, and it's clear that discussions should be taken with those that run the sports facility. I confirm I do not want to see any of the options implemented. The question posed was to find a solution to the chaotic, dangerous situation with parking and traffic movements on Saturdays and Sundays in order to protect members of the public, especially children. It's not rocket science. All it needed was someone with common sense to visit the area and see the problem. But what we got was a paper exercise and a sledgehammer to crack a nut. What we do need is someone to sort timed restricted parking and/or for someone to examine the lease and enforce the details. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm only going to say a few words on this, but you know, it is so, as has been said, when the City Council's relationship with the organisation managing the sports field is governed by the terms of the lease, and the lease dates from about 2011 or somewhere around there. And there is nothing in that which allows the council to demand that they provide off-street parking or so forth. That provision was not put in the lease when the lease was signed. So that's not something, you know, under our control. The football club can come and ask for a variation of the lease. I think it's unlikely that they would do that, but they could do. But it cannot be imposed by this authority. So you've got your paper in front of you. I think the consultation was well done. You know, it was about 25 responses out of about 50% response rate, which is really high. I think that shows that, you know, the proper engagement was done with people living in the area. Does the street need double yellow lines on it? I don't believe that it does. I mean, I could live with the sort of pinch point section part of the way down on the eastern side because it's, you know, it's pretty tight there, and if you park there, you do actually potentially cut the road in two. But beyond that, I think any further restrictions will be overkill. And I just want to say again, I think the consultation was done very thoroughly, and I'd like to congratulate officers for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stubbs. Just quickly, Tracy.
Very quickly, I have a copy of the lease, which in fact says the tenant shall use reasonable endeavours to ensure that users of the premises are requested not to park in Cockleshell Gardens. So, well, it depends on the interpretation placed on that.
I mean, not that we actually sit in silos, but looking at it I had to look at it from a traffic and transportation aspect and the impacts on some of the requests that have actually been given to me, and that would equally apply to the users of the sports facilities in Cockleshell Gardens as it would to any other similar circumstance around the city where there is perhaps an impact. You could argue that schools fall within the same category to a certain degree with what they actually do there, but I'm looking at it from a point of view of the road impacts and what can or could or should or shouldn't be done when it comes to making it safer for pedestrians and road users to actually employ. The subject of the lease, I would suggest, is a different conversation with a different set of officers to see whether that can be and could be achieved in that respect. One of the residents in the deputations, certainly the written deputations in the report, makes reference to East Lodge, which is up in my neck of the woods. And certainly it's been an ongoing issue up there with parking on what is a 90-degree bend in a very narrow area to access the East Lodge sports facilities. We have addressed the issue as best we can. There were some subtle changes to lineage to make it safer, particularly as it is literally the access is on a 90-degree bend. So it sort of has echoes of where we were talking about with the previous one. But certainly we engaged and officers engaged with the users, and it's primarily a single football club that actually use it up there to try and impose on their parents, shall we say, to make to be a bit more neighbourly in the way they go about parking when they bring their children on a Sunday morning to actually come and play football. And it has certainly worked. It may well work with some pressure on the football facilities and the football users at Cockleshell Gardens. But with the best in the world, if there aren't any parking restrictions there, then the argument comes from the parent, there's nothing to actually stop me parking here in the first place, irrespective of what you say or do. And we do have some of that still at East Lodge Park. But I've got a couple of questions, if I can, Pam. Tracy made reference to time restrictions at Fratton Park. Is that done through line enforcement, or is it the fact that it's a residence parking zone that actually gives us that?
You can do timed enforcement, and that's kind of part of that is what we're requesting here. I mean, the issue for the double yellow lines under 2.1 is the fact that if you have that as a time restriction, it suggests that it's not. It suggests that it's safe to do it at other times, which I'm not sure we would necessarily agree with at that pinch point.
Yeah.
Which is why we haven't recommended that.
Right, okay. And there was a no, and there was also a no enforcement sign, I believe, or an enforcement sign that Tracy referred to as well in the deputation, that somebody put up a sign talking about, I think it was enforcement, was it, Tracy?
Yeah, there was a sign that was located outside number 49.
Yeah.
Cockleshell Gardens. They requested that patrons did not park in Cockleshell Gardens.
Now, would that have been a PCC sign, or was that something that somebody else put up?
I'm afraid I have no knowledge of that at all. I assumed it was a residential sign, but I will go back and double check that.
But again, following that through to its natural conclusion, that would have been effectively a request, and again, nothing to stop anybody that wasn't a resident or was a football user from parking there anyway and just thumbing their nose at it effectively.
Yes, that's right. Without the legal restrictions, it's very difficult to enforce that.
And the legal restrictions come back to either a residence parking zone effectively, or alternatively yellow paint is what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Lynn?
Luke mentioned PCC, they can't force the club to provide parking, but is it not possible to negotiate? Has anybody talked with them? I mean, I don't know, this is a question, I'm not criticising, I'm just asking, has anybody actually asked them? Because I've been down Cockleshell Gardens many times in week times, but also lots on Sundays, taking my grandson to football. It's a nightmare on a Sunday.
So you're one of these people that parks there, are you, Lynn?
No, I do my very best. Try to get there early before a match, because not so much now, but when he was younger, the matches were earlier on a Sunday, so I could get there early and find a parking space within the grounds there. But in lots of other places where he plays football, they put out cones on match days, because a lot of the kids are coming from all over the area. I mean, he used to play for Porchester, and they played in league matches. So you can't necessarily appeal to the better nature of parents who come from outside the area, because they come from outside the area and think, to hell with it, you know, it's not our area kind of thing. So, I mean, I'm not saying everybody does, but, you know, that can be the attitude. It's very different, I think, if you're coming from Portsmouth itself. So is it not possible to negotiate with the club, first of all, and secondly, put out cones on a Sunday, and maybe have, I mean, that's something I've had difficulty getting through on a Sunday with those narrow pinch points, because cars parked outside when they shouldn't be, and how ambulances etc. get through, I don't know. So I would have thought the single lines on the pinch points, so they're only advisory for a Saturday Sunday. You put a combination rather than just one, as you say, taking a hammer to crack a nut. You know, I'm sure there must be lots of other ways of.
Well, again, I don't think we can. This is a TRO that we're talking about, so it's a black and white decision in that respect. So we couldn't put that in as part of the TRO or the recommendation here, but I'm sure that we can do something and take it away to see whether we can have either through traffic and transportation or whoever is responsible with the lease or whatever, to see whether it can be put on a proper footing, to see whether they can actually have some sort of, I'll call it traffic management, right, in that respect, to see whether we can actually mitigate it from a different direction. But what I've got here before me is effectively to look at in that respect.
I'm not suggesting you change that now, because I know that's not possible. But I'm saying
it's not possible with what we've actually got here.
There are other approaches, I'm sure, and I think perhaps talking with local residents. I mean, there are lots of responses in here which say they don't want the double yellow lines, which you've got to respect. But at the same time, on a Sunday, if I was living there, I think I'd be climbing up the wall, you know, because it is a nightmare. So there must be other ways of going around it. And even if the club, if they agreed, even if are they allowed to charge, even if it's £1 a time, you know, you're there for 2 hours, and they're making a bit of money out of it, so that's be a carrot on a stick. I don't know.
You're talking about charging to park on the public highway, and I don't think.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
We can actually go down.
Well, there is some parking inside, so yeah.
Well, that might that's a different argument as part of their lease, but it's when we're talking about the public highway here, so we need to keep it to wherever we are. Yeah.
I think most priority to the public who are living on this street is very important for their safety, and in case ambulance come, need to someone to come and going is very important. So we should talk with the club to negotiate to do something for the public on this street.
I think Joe and Pam have got the message with regards to talking with the club. Now, whether it's something that traffic and transportation get involved in as a lead, or whether they have an input into that conversation, I think the message is clear that there needs to be a dialogue with the football club to actually be a little bit more neighbourly and see how we can actually approach the traffic issues that we've actually got before us. But I come back to what I've got. This decision is about a traffic regulation order as to whether do we put double yellow lines in or don't we put double yellow lines in. And I can't build anything in there about conversations with specific users on council leased property in that respect.
Perhaps those other options could have been considered before it came here, because it does put you in a difficult position.
I totally understand where you're coming from, but I think we are where we are, and I'm sure we can take that forward and have that conversation going forward anyway. I think, Pam's, you going to press that button, or are you just nodding at me?
No, I mean, the only thing we can do is take a deferral on it while those questions are answered, and then bring it back. That's the only thing that we...
So in theory, I could actually defer. What you're saying is because it's a single item report with no other TROs on it, I could defer this so that officers have appropriate conversations with the club to see whether that addresses the issues going forward, rather than actually put in parking restrictions on that basis. And then it can come back at a later date, and we can, I guess, therefore, we can carry forward these. Will we go back out to consultation on that basis once that has happened?
No, it would. The consultation would still stand, but then we would bring back the further information in a report like this. The public would obviously have an opportunity to comment on the report and the contents of the report.
Yeah.
But the consultation that we've undertaken through the TRO process would still stand.
Right, because I mean, as Councillor Stubbs has put it out, there's a very good response here. So clearly there is an issue attached to this. At the same token, I don't want to consult people to death unnecessarily on these sorts of issues. Okay, in which base then, sorry, Yaya, you want to add something?
Yes, I just like to, as you said, I completely agree and strongly recommend for the safety for the residents, because when it's football going through club, that there is nightmare for the residents over there. For the ambulance and people are going for the residents, there it will be more difficult. So I think it is very important to talk with the club and make negotiation. That's all.
If the decision is to actually defer this, Pam, when would we be able to start talking to the club, do you think? Not that I'm holding it to you. I'm just conscious of the fact that we're in March, and I would imagine that, Mrs. Stevenson can probably answer better than I can, that it probably isn't quite the impact down there during the summer months necessarily, when the football season is over, and certainly something needs to be introduced, something sooner rather than later.
Yes, I mean, we can start talking with the club very quickly after this meeting if a deferral was decided upon, but obviously we're about to go into Purda,
Yep.
which would make it difficult to take it back until after June?
Yeah, till that
June time. So that's the difficulty, I suppose.
But with the best in the world, I appreciate that Purda seems to get in the way of everything these days. But I would imagine if we have a conversation, I say we as the City Council have a conversation with the club and they introduce some sort of, I call it traffic management, the residents are going to expect to see it run with them managing the traffic to the benefit of the residents for a period of time. maybe a few weeks anyway, so it may well be that PERDA might present that opportunity to see whether it actually works that way, and then by the time we come back in whenever, it will be a case of this is what we've done, this is how it's worked. Residents can give their views on whether they think something has worked or whether the club have been reluctant to get involved or whatever, and then we can take a decision again at that moment in time. So it would need a period for the club to actually put something in place and for residents to see whether it's actually working to their benefit or otherwise. So PERDA may be a good thing. Okay, on that basis then, I'm going to defer the report to give the opportunity for officers to actually chat with the club, see whether we can come to some sort of arrangement that's going to see whether we can have some sort of club organised traffic management system there that improves the situation. But I wouldn't necessarily like, because I mean Halliday Crescent is quite a narrow road, isn't it? I wouldn't necessarily like to see that become the destination of choice, shall we say, as an alternative to Cockleshell Gardens. It needs to be a managed approach from the club. So on that basis, defer the report for further conversations with the football club. Thank you very much. I think it needs to be what I would call a holistic approach to the area to make sure it is for the benefit of everybody. I wouldn't want to see, I mean, they probably use it for tournaments, but I wouldn't want one to become the sole use to the exclusion of the other. We need to have a managed thing that isn't going to drive the traffic somewhere else. So the club would need to be involved in looking at Halliday Crescent as a traffic managed area at the same time, which is the important bit. It needs to be all accesses to the actual football facilities that need to be managed and not just Cockleshell Gardens, otherwise something else become the destination of choice. Second time I've said that. Okay, thank you very much. We are now going backwards, members, to Item 4, preferred provider for citywide cycle hire scheme. Pam, would you like to introduce, please?
Okay. Following the decision made at the November 2017 Traffic and Transportation Decision Meeting to support the development of a floating bike hire scheme within Portsmouth, meetings have taken place with 6 bike hire providers. Nextbike was identified as able to meet the needs of the City Council in providing a high-quality pilot bike share scheme for residents and visitors. It is therefore recommended that the City Council enters into an 18-month pilot with Nextbike. The concession contract is agreed and signed with Nextbike prior to the launch of the first bikes, which will govern the pilot scheme. And finally, that a code of conduct for bike share schemes is explored within the City.
Thank you very much. The members, you probably had this report a little bit late. My apologies for that. There are a couple of last-minute issues that we needed to go through. But before we go any further, I want to place on record, if I can, my thanks to Nick Scott and his team, because Nick has worked very, very hard, done an awful lot of hours on this, and if he hasn't torn all of his hair out, he quite well should have done by now, to be quite honest, because I think he has worked literally above and beyond, and I'd like, if you can, Pam, express my thanks to Nick for all the hard work he's put in on this, particularly as we sort of put a somewhat tight time scale on him, shall we say, to get something up and running. But certainly to him and all the team that have actually looked to actually bring this forward. It's something that we've perhaps been involved in and something I've been pushing for best part of the year, and I know that my 2 opposition spokesmen have been supportive in what we've been looking to achieve in bringing to the city. And I think we've even had a cautious nod from the Portsmouth Cycle Forum at the same time with something like this. Yep, he's nodding away at the back. Fantastic. I knew I'd get him to nod. Did you want to say anything while you're here, Ian? Because you're more than welcome to say something if you wish to come down.
Obviously, because when we generated that, there wasn't a report attached, so we'd love to see the report.
There were a couple of minor issues. Nothing sinister attached to it whatsoever. It was just getting a little bit of an agreement with regards to things like the number of bikes they were bringing in and stuff like that, as much as anything else. So it's nothing sinister. Effectively, this report is basically saying we want to crack on and do this. Nextbike are certainly keen to come to the city. So this is about setting out where we want to be, and then there will be some legalities that the officers will go through with Nextbike to bring it forward. They've talked about in the report about suggested locations for the geo-fenced areas, but they are not necessarily cast in stone. The idea of a floating bike scheme means that these sort of geo-fenced areas, I'm learning all the technology that goes with this, you know, can be, I'll be doing resources next, Councillor Jonas, could be moved around the city, because certainly I look at this and I don't see anything suggested perhaps for the seafront or for the historic dockyardy type areas and stuff like that. That doesn't mean to say that they won't happen, it just means to say that anything is up for consideration as such a scheme, if it proves to be successful, can actually be branched out around the area. But certainly there are some other things that have been introduced. We've talked about, there's a code of conduct mentioned on this here. I understand, and again I'm looking at Pam, that there's a code of conduct for cycle hire providers in places like Glasgow, which look to sort out a lot of things with regards to the standard of the bike's behaviour and a lot of other sorts of things that we would look to introduce going forward. So we actually have a controllable bike hire scheme using the Portsmouth network as well. Now, I made reference to Nick, and Nick's been talking to a myriad of different providers over the course of the last 4 months since November, about 4 months since November, to see what they could actually bring to the table for the benefit of Portsmouth. And if you actually look, we have, and I'll skip down the report a little bit, 5.2, and one of the big attractions for us is what Nextbike could bring to Portsmouth beyond bikes. And the fact that they're looking to provide local employment opportunities for local cycle businesses to get involved in things like the service and maintenance of the bikes, so that it becomes effectively a truly Portsmouth cycle hire scheme, is certainly very attractive to us. Other bike providers were suggesting that when they had bike issues and needed to do service and maintenance, they'd stick them in the back of a lorry and take them up to West London to actually service them, which isn't where we want to be whatsoever. So certainly the things like the local employment opportunities and the fact that everything is going to be Portsmouth based is very attractive for us in the local economy as well. And the other aspect of it is things like the membership type that you can actually see in 4.4, in so much that there are a variety of different types of membership that you can actually have. We're catering not just for the regular users, but there's also the NEETs and also things like the student and the OAP population with opportunities there for everybody of all ages to be able to get involved in cycling in the city. And quite frankly, if you look at some of the costs that we're talking about, you know, for a standard membership, which would be me, 30 quid annually, and then 25p for half an hour after the first half an hour, that is, to my mind, extremely affordable. And with the best in the world, if you're doing half-hour trips or less than half-hour trips, provided you're booking the bike in and out, you could effectively get quite a chunk of cycling each day for free and not run into that second 25 minutes. So there's a lot of positivities that we've actually got behind this, and I personally think it's a good place to be when we're addressing things like healthy living and exercise. You could argue that it's also going to contribute to things like the air quality issues, if we can get more people cycling around the city. The benefits there, I can't see any negativities. I really can't. Now, I know the Portsmouth Cycle Forum will probably sit there and say infrastructure at me, but we will talk about infrastructure under the local transport plan. but certainly from the cycle hire point of view, making it something that encourages people that don't own bikes to actually get out and enjoy some cycling and getting some healthy living. I think it's an excellent place to actually be. That's me waffled on enough. I think, Lynn, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's an excellent scheme. I think everybody benefits.
Yaya?
Yes, it is very good, but I like to just make cheaper as possible, then people can try on it. As a 25p after 30 minutes, I think is quite high. Need to little bit reduce. That's all.
Well, the first 30 minutes are actually free if you actually look at the cost. So if we take a student, let's say, because certainly the opportunities with the University of Portsmouth and some of the big employers like BAE, we've got the dockyard and the Navy base here, there is the opportunities there to expand the scheme beyond just that. But if you're a student to want to use a bike, it's going to cost you £20 a year. So what you know, that's what, 50p a week. And if you're only doing a half-hour ride to university lecture and then popping in, that's all you're paying for your effectively your public transport is 50p a week, because you can do it within the 25, within the half an hour. If you run longer than that, it's just going to cost you 25p. I mean, most people these days, if I go into Costa's and buy a coffee, it'll cost me about £2.50, and yet you look at that and it's a tenth of the price. So I think it's good value for money, in all honesty. I really do.
Yes, that is correct. I think if it's maybe less people come to annually, my personal opinion, but if people go by the hourly rate, then at least they try, and then can be, if it's good demand, then can be increased.
Well, yes, but the incentive there is to take a membership. And obviously, if you take out a membership of something, it encourages you to use the bikes more and more and more. So certainly, the cost effectiveness falls in a membership, and it also becomes a bit like a gym membership, I suppose. There is an added incentive to actually use it quite frequently. And certainly, around the south of the city, certainly in the summer months, which is why we brought this forward, because Next Bike, I believe, want to start in June time. So they want to start working for the summer months. It's going to be exercised throughout the summer period, and I think that's where we really want to be. They have also talked in terms that they're happy to share data with us, so we'll be able to get ideas on things like the popular routes that people are taking and whatever, so we can see and use that data to see where we need to look at the infrastructure, to see where it's possible to do so. So we're going to capture some very strong data like this. And personally, I think it's an extremely exciting place to be going forward. And I suppose my only downside is if we launch it in June, it'll be Councillor Lee Mason, Lord Mayor, on a bike, won't it? As opposed to Councillor Ken Elkin. But hey-ho, we're all going to start somewhere. It can help to sponsored weight loss, I think, in the UK. Okay, well, the recommendations I've got in front of me are that we enter into an 18-month pilot with Next Bike. We talked to Next Bike. They're happy with the 18-month pilot process that we're actually looking to go into, because it effectively gives them a summer to set up and run, and then a full working year with a summer to actually see how it goes. That we have a concession contract with Next Bike prior to the launch of the first bikes in Portsmouth, which I believe is probably going to be starting sooner rather than later. And that going forward, we look to make sure that we actually have a code of conduct for bike users, so that we can actually have something that actually goes forward in a positive way and is a positive experience for people in Portsmouth. And on that basis, I'm happy to accept all three recommendations. Thank you very much. Right, I'm sort of going backs and forwards all over here, because I actually missed off the local transport plan when I went back. But let's do the local transport plan now. Pam?
Okay, Portsmouth City Council, as the Highway Authority, has a statutory obligation to develop a programme of small-scale improvement schemes to deliver against the objectives as identified in the local transport plan. A sum of £1.5 million was approved at the full council in February 2018 for this purpose, and the proposed programme is set out in Appendix A of the report. In addition to the approval of this programme of spend, it is also recommended that the authority is delegated to the Director of Regeneration in consultation with Cabinet Member and the Section 151 officer to agree any minor amendments to the implementation plan.
Thank you very much. As Pam said, this actually went through full council in the budget. I don't think it went into the specific details of all the schemes that we actually had there, because that's a decision, as Pam said, for Tristan Samuels and myself and my successor in that particular instance to follow that. But I will come back to the previous report, the bike hire scheme. If we roll back to last October, we had a bit of a council love-in and hire about cycling, where I think the original notice of motion was to look to spend 5% of the local transport plan on cycling. And the council, and I spoke to council and said that we are currently spending well in excess of that anyway. Well, this continues on from the £2.5 million plus that this administration's actually put into cycling over the past few years, and the fact that there's some 30% of the schemes here are to do with cycling and cycle safety. So we are working in so much that we are introducing the cycling side of it to improve it for city residents and make cycling accessible. But we're also looking to invest in the infrastructure, because quite clearly an increase in the number of cyclists on the streets, we want to make sure that it's going to be actually safe to do so. And there are a number of schemes in here that seek to address cycle safety, road safety, pedestrian safety, and more importantly, child safety around schools at the same time. But we will also be using things like the near-miss data that we're actually looking to do, and the data capture that we do from Nextbike, to make sure that when we go forward with local transport schemes, particularly on the cycling front, that we are targeting our resources where they are best needed to make the improvements in the city that we're looking for. And certainly people like the Portsmouth Cycle Forum, Cycle UK, etc., will play prominent partners in making sure that we get things right where things need to actually be put into place. Yaya.
Yes, thank you very much for your explanation. But I like to recommend as well, sometimes is bike also dangerous than car. Sometimes people are driving through the pavement, and when people coming to the corner, some people going. So most of the time, children, family, they are walking on through the pavement. But sometimes bike also dangerous. So we have to make sure the rule regulations and safety concern. That's all.
Certainly on that issue, we can put it all as much safety, cycling safety protection from vehicles as we possibly can. You can never mitigate all the risk, but because we're a city where vehicles and bikes share generally the same common space, so we will look at that. But when it comes down to cycling and pedestrians moving in the same area, we will also look on education programs on that basis. We've got the active travel unit that work very, very hard on making sure that we actually do that. We've got people like the Cycle Forum who can work on that aspect as well, because it's obviously about being sympathetic cyclists to your environment in the same way that we expect car drivers to do so. So we will keep on an education programme on that respect. And certainly the police have been doing a lot of work. We've had the near-miss operations that they've been doing with vehicles and cycles, where they've been educating vehicle drivers. But at the same token that they did that particular operation in the city, they also did an operation with cyclists in the evening, wearing dark clothing, cycling unlit cycles in various pedestrian areas and stuff like that. And they worked on that process as well. So working with partner organisations like the police, we're addressing both aspects with the cyclists, both from a protection from vehicles and taking a view of their own safety effectively, and the safety of pedestrians around them. I can't say we're ever going to eradicate everything in the same way that you can expect people to drive at 20 miles an hour, but in reality they don't always do so. But we will do everything we can as a local authority to ensure that that we put in as much of the way of safety for both pedestrians and cyclists so that we can actually address perhaps the healthier ways of getting around the city as best we can. Lynn?
Yes, there's one question I have, and that is there a sort of long-term plan beyond, I mean, the LTP is for so many years, but what is the bigger vision for the city, particularly with things like cycling, because there are issues to be addressed, like the infrastructure, etc. And my son is a keen cyclist. He belongs to a cycle forum in Newbury, and what they're doing there, he lives just off the A4 in Thatcham, and they're putting pedestrian priority on the A4, going from Newbury through to Reading. So any vehicles coming onto the road have to give priority to cyclists, which I think is one way towards improving safety and cycling conditions for cyclists. But I mean, I'm just wondering, that sort of thing, looking long term, we're here now. What about in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Is that sort of?
Are you talking about a cycling strategy going
Well,
forward?
I think it's lots of things. I mean, it's not just cycling strategy, but I mean, because it's really just a start. I mean, I know there's been some work going on with cycling for several years, but I mean, compared with some other cities, we're still quite a way behind. And yet, and I know there are reasons for that. You know, but ideally, we are a good cycling city because we're flat. But the infrastructure doesn't.
You still haven't been up. You haven't been up Farlington Avenue recently on your bike, have you?
No, my bike sits just outside my back door, and that's where it stays, I'm afraid, because I will not address Copner Bridge. Right, that terrifies me. So, but I'm just thinking. Yes, cycling, and particularly because of the we are behind, and trying to get more and more people out of their cars and onto cycles. You need to have something there to encourage people, and so I'm just wondering whether long-term plans are there, even just the ghost outline kind of thing, you know?
Well, short answer is yes. We are going to be working with representatives of DFT through the LC WIP programme, which is the Local Cycling and Walking Investment Plan. And in tandem with that, we are going to be developing a revised cycling strategy. So all of that work is about to commence in earnest in the next few weeks, hopefully. So yes, and I think you're exactly right, that without the kind of long-term view in terms of what we would like as a city to deliver, it's very difficult. Otherwise, you're not working towards that overall goal. So yes, it is in train.
And I think, Lynn, if I roll back to last October, I think the unanimous view of the City Council was the fact that cycling was a good place to be. I think each political party perhaps had a subtly different approach, but don't think anybody disagreed with the thrust of where we're going. The Council is committed to a minimum of 10% of its local transport plan, certainly on the cycling infrastructure. I'm sure people would like to see more. But certainly it's 30% of this plan, as I've said, and I think I think the average over the past 3 years has been something in the 40%. So it's clearly been a serious aspiration of the City Council to actually do something about it. And certainly the introduction of a bike hire scheme is perhaps going to focus City Council into making the city a safer place to actually cycle if we end up with at least another 150 bikes going across the city, and possibly more if it proves to be successful, because certainly Next Bike, if it does prove to be a successful pilot scheme, are going to be looking to introduce more bikes to the city and expand their operation. I would if I was them. So we've got to make sure that the infrastructure is as good as it possibly can be from that aspect of it. But certainly when you talk about other investments, when we're talking about things like smart city technology and stuff like that, there is a holistic approach to how we actually go about managing the entire city, but it's got to be for the benefit of pedestrians, cyclists and vehicle users all working together side by side safely, or as safe as we can possibly make it. Okay, well, coming back to the recommendation, that improves the implementation plan and it delegates authority to the Director of Regen in consultation with the Cabinet member to agree any minor amendments. So on that basis, Joe, I'm quite happy to approve all the recommendations that we have on the local transport plan. And I think moving forward, we have one more report, which is Lyndhurst Road and Crofton Road one-way system. Pam.
Okay, this report brings the response to traffic regulation order proposal on the creation of a one-way system within Lyndhurst and Crofton Roads, following road safety concerns which were raised by Lyndhurst Junior and College Park Infant School communities. 18 responses were received to the TRO consultation, which was held in January of this year. 15 responses were in support and 3 were not in support. The proposed directions of the one-way system formalise the current driver behaviour, with more vehicles travelling northbound on Lyndhurst Road. Contraflow cycling is proposed in both roads to improve accessibility for active travel and further support the take-up of cycling within the city. Further, the implementation of a one-way system enables the provision of 14 metres of additional parking space, as outlined in Section C of the TRO in Appendix 1.
Okay, thank you very much. For my part, I've been up to this area around the two schools. I also went up with members of the road safety team, certainly around school time. It's fair to say it is pretty chaotic around there. I've experienced some pretty robust language directed at the crossing warden, shall we say, from motorists looking to pick up their children, Mexican standoffs, you name it, and it affects both Kirby Road and Stubbington Avenue and the through flows there as well. Talked to a lot of residents up there, as well as parents picking up children from the schools. They were all broadly supportive of the fact that something needs to be done and that a one-way system was probably the best thing to do. Also met with staff at the infant school who see the whole situation as being one of child safety, because cars in Mexican standoffs undertaking each other, which does happen there as well, particularly where the yellow zigzags are. They say it's an accident waiting to happen, and when you're dealing with largely infant and junior school children, there is an issue there. And I think really the response there sort of echoes what I got when I actually went up there and met with staff and parents at the same time. Yaya, you were indicating?
Yes, thank you for explanation again. I think it is very good opportunity for the local and for the school. But I like to strongly recommend to put the signpost both sides on the both road. For once is gone, one-way system should be care of the children and residents to reduce the speed, even 20 miles down.
It's a 20-mile-an-hour limit anyway there, isn't it? Yeah, so...
The signpost to be aware of their children crossing.
Lynn?
That is a problem in Portsmouth with the 20-mile-an-hour signs, because if you come off, if you're going from a 30-mile-an-hour road onto a 20, you've got the sign.
Yep.
But if you're going from a 20-mile road into another 20-mile road, as you will be up there with Kirby Road, because that's 20 mile, but Stubbington is 30, isn't it?
Yes.
And people say, you know, well, it's 30 miles an hour. No, it's not. It's 20, because you've got the little roundels, you know. So people, and even now, after all the years it's been in, people are still not aware that, you know, there are these 20-mile-an-hour roads, because they've got no sign on the entrance to them. But you can't put them up, can you? DFT guidelines.
We're quite restricted in terms of what we can do, but we can certainly look at whether there's additional, you know, signage we can do about the schools. We can look into that.
I mean, certainly some of the schools up where I am, they've actually involved the children in designing signs. So you have a rectangular sign where they've actually been involved in the design of it, and it's had the 20 within it that's gone sort of close to school. So it may well be something that we can look at, and it will also perhaps engage with the children in the schools to see whether they'd like to come up with some sort of designs at the same time. Because certainly when you certainly engage with children, particularly the infant school children, in issues of road safety, they are extremely enthusiastic, and you get Hester Power going in the opposite direction, which I saw down at Langston last week, with some great deal of enthusiasm around Pompey Monster and getting their parents to actually walk them to school. I know there was a key ring attached to the end of it as an incentive, but even some of the parents that were living outside of the catchment area, the children were insisting that they didn't come down close to school, but they actually got them out of the car and walked the last 10 minutes to and from the school so that they could do their bit. I'm sure there were probably a few frustrated parents, but the children were certainly on board with that, and certainly my experience with some of the other schools, you engage with them in road safety, particularly around their schools, and they are extraordinarily enthusiastic, and they do tend to stick with it. So it may well be something that we can engage the schools with on that basis anyway. Yaya, you indicate?
Yes, I think I've seen somewhere in UK and some other places, they put the signpost, the deer crossing, animal crossing, children crossing. They got some sign posted.
What, deer crossing?
Yeah.
Don't have many deer crossing in Kirby Road, I wouldn't have thought, but I know where you're coming from.
Just an example I'm saying, I think we can, but it's when they've got one-way system, some people even say they can put the speed up. So at least if they see the sign, they will use.
Excellent. Okay, unless anybody else has got any comments, I'm more than happy with that. I think Road Safety have come up with a natural way round that seems to be generally supportive. So on that basis, let's agree the recommendations 2.1, little brackets 1, 2 and 3. Thank you very much. And before I go, can I just place, as it's my last TNT for this year anyway, going forward, place on record my thanks to Pam and to her team for having to put up with me, shall we say, and some of the things that I've been asking with a smile on her face and a due diligence and professionalism. Thank you very much, Pam. I failed. That's about an hour and a half this time, isn't it? The last one was 5 minutes, and I was hoping it actually might be. It was never going to be shorter than 5 minutes, I think we have to say. But anyhow. So we have this pregnant pause where we wait for everything to be switched off now, do we?